let's do this. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another wonderful episode of the Uper Farmer. Still in the garage for our garage cigar talks. How are you all doing? I'm doing fine. I was really hoping the last one I did this was going to be the last episode in the garage, and I was going to be out on my deck. But the weather took a bit of a turn. We're now back in a cold snafu. Good for maple syruping. Our maple trees are running, which is great. But not so good for getting out and relaxing out on the deck watching the river. Might as well get the formalities. We are smoking the Ley Imperiosa Double Nicaraguan. Very dark cigar. You can definitely taste it. I went to go do a dry draw. Just test the draw on the cigar, and you can kind of puckered up my lips a little bit. So very heavy on the acid on this cigar. So yeah, and I'm not a huge fan of the dark cigars, but I won't turn it down. For the beer tonight, Kuna Brewing Company, the Red Ridge. I think I've shared the story about the Kuna Brewing Company. They're from my hometown, actually. And I enjoy their beers. The Widowmaker is probably one of my workhorse beers. That's one I like to go to. That's probably comparable to my Bud Light beer. It's drinkable, it's delicious. Nice amber beer there. And not a red, of course. That's interesting. A lot of grapefruit in that one. Not bad, though. Yeah, they're from my hometown. And when they first opened, I remember actually as being a kid when they opened up. And everyone swore they were going to shut down. They said, no, this is a Bud Light town. Who wants to drink craft beer? But they really, in Michigan especially, were the workhorse of the craft beer industry. They really did a lot to get it approved and get out there and really promote that craft beer movement that now Michigan is one of the leaders in the nation of craft beer. So good for them. Kuna Brewing Company, still open to this day. When I'm in Houghton, I'll swing in there and try out some of their new brews every now and then. But tonight, what are we going to talk about? Well, we're going to talk about a tough subject. Let's talk about mental health. This is something getting more and more press recently due to all the lockdowns and whatnot, and people losing their jobs and the general fear in the nation. But it's something, of course, that isn't trendy necessarily. It's been with us for evers and evers. But it's something we, until very recently, demonized. I always like to refer to mental health issues, especially stuff like anxiety and depression, as the new leprosy. If you study any biblical scripture, the lepers were the ones who they announced themselves. They'd have to say unclean as you walk by them so you'd avoid them. They weren't allowed to sleep in the inner protective circle of the camps. They had to sleep outside the camps in the towns. You were forbid from touching them or interacting with them. You might throw them a few pennies here and there. But by and large, you avoided them at all costs. Sadly, that's where mental health is in our world today, in our nation especially. We do treat it as the new lepers. We avoid them. We push them out. We don't allow them to be our friends or to try and understand where they're coming from. The cliches of, well, have you ever tried just not being depressed? Why don't you just try getting out of bed and going? I can't say that I am sinless in that accusation of being guilty of accusing people who are having mental health issues as being lepers. or treating them as such, I should say. A lot of that has to do with my career field, um, especially back when I started. It was still viewed, you didn't need mental health. It wasn't a thing. If you were tough, we had to be tough. Blood, guts, gore, death, suffering. We had to see it all, take it, internalize it. If you couldn't take it, you just weren't tough. You weren't strong. You just weren't good enough to be in the profession. We should wash out. Of course, we know that's 100% false now. Not true at all. That, of course, it weighs on anyone. I mean, the strongest, most mentally stable person, you see what we see, and it runs its toll. Now, just like if you cut someone, they'll bleed to death. This emotional stuff we see, you eventually psychologically bleed to death. When all it would take is a Band-Aid, a suture, a blood transfusion, and the person would be much better. They'd be able to get through what they're going through. But we don't do that. We don't give that credit. We don't encourage mental health. I sat through an interesting training where they talked about how every single ambulance director, program director of an education program should very publicly and openly talk about their mental health and go to psychiatrists and psychologists. And be very open about it. Yeah, it's normal. I'm going to go see the psychologist today, talk about what's going on the last couple of weeks. Just like we talk about going to the doctor. You know, it's a happenstance. Oh, what happened this week? Oh, I went to the doctor. Yeah, I got my prostate checked. Well, I mean, that can be normal talking about that. That's just expected. But tell someone, I went to go see a psychiatrist today. Oh my God, what's wrong? Are you crazy? It's unfortunate. It really is. A lot of these issues we're seeing with violence, especially the mass shootings we've seen in the last few years, if these people had not been treated as lepers, as outsiders, as outcasts, if they were instead encouraged to go seek treatment, get help, have support from the community, their family and friends, I do wonder if we'd have the trends that we see of the violence, or if that would be almost non-existent. Now, I bring all this up, I'm kind of delaying talking about the true thing I want to talk about. I've dealt with a lot of mental health issues, especially in the more recent years of my life. It was something that I did not want to talk about. I probably would never have talked about it. I probably would never have made this video. If it wasn't for a friend of mine who runs a podcast, EMScapades. EMScapades the comic, and EMScapades Off Duty is the podcast. A gentleman who I've come to know and build a bit of a relationship with, named Ben Clincy, the creator, executive, owner, operator of that comic and podcast. In a lot of his podcasts, he would talk about mental health and his journey through mental health. And it was very empowering. It was amazing, actually, how normalized he'd make it. By just talking frank about it. Not doing a one-off, tongue-in-cheek type presentation, but talking about his journey. How it all started, how it built, what he has to do to keep it in check when he's feeling low. It was just amazing, very empowering. It was a lot like I talked about the dyslexic empowerment training I went to. I had a very same epiphany, revelation, where we need to talk about this, we need to normalize it. And I can't do what Ben does. He's an amazing speaker, really is a great, great guy, and he really does a lot to help normalize getting mental health help. So I decided to share my story. Get it out there. Show that, yes, someone who's been in EMS for 20 some plus years, we can have mental health issues and still be very productive members of an ambulance. We can have crisis happen. The proverbial getting cut and need sutures. And that's fine. So let's start with my 2 years to where stuff really, really built. And the mistakes I made. And then the successes I had. So if you've listened to any of my older cigar talks, I talked about my ambulance accidents. I was involved in 2 of them. The first one I coped with actually quite well. I did pretty good with that one. I just saw it as part of the job, but still it's a chink in the armor, as they call it. You kind of see what's happening. And it kind of started the ball rolling. Between the 2 ambulance accidents, that's when I almost lost my wife. She was dying in front of me. I had to be the medic to save her. As I tell people, spoiler alert, she lived. That's why we have so many kids. Yeah, but that one really hit me. Again, I talked about that where I had a real hard mental time because I wasn't able to be the husband. I was robbed of that. I had to be the medic to save her life. I made that choice. I left her. I left her alone without a husband that day. Now that 1-2 punch was enough to give me some mental health issues. I was bleeding. I was bleeding pretty good. I also had, during that time, my longtime, very trusted partner got injured on a call. He ended up getting electrocuted, started having a heart attack while I was running a code. Just one of those great cluster storms. At one point, I was told that he probably wouldn't make it. And there was nothing I could do. I kept rethinking of all the stuff I did wrong that day. I made a lot of mistakes on that call. Again, nothing, I took credit for those mistakes. Now, they weren't actual mistakes. They were calls that were made. With the information available at the time, I made the correct call, but I still took responsibility. So that also messed me up. But after my wife almost died, I became an alcoholic. I tell people, if you saw me awake and I wasn't on duty, I was drinking. I'd go through actually quite a bit. I'd go through a fifth to a pint a night. And that went on for 2-3 months, give or take. It might have been a little bit longer than that. It was just dealing with the stress and anxiety of taking care of my wife, who was laid up for about a month. The realization that I almost lost her. Dealing with the fact that I've always been okay with my death. I don't mind death. I am always actively trying to pursue my life to lead in the way that I'll be ready for the afterlife. I never once thought what that would do to my wife, and that realization really hurt. So I drank. I drank quite a bit. Thankfully, I have some good friends who know the signs and symptoms of alcoholism, and they were not scared to call me out. One in particular was visiting. I grabbed some glasses. We were going to have a drink that night. And he went over to my garbage can and looked in, gave it a little shake, and all the empties were clattering around together. He made a comment, something to the effect of, that's quite a bit of empties. And I joked something, well, that's just 1 week's worth. He's like, you need to get help. Yeah, this isn't good. This isn't healthy. This isn't right. So he was right. He was totally right. I worked on it, talked about my feelings and emotions, went to talk to, at that time I was talking to a priest friend of ours, which was great. He gave me a lot of insight, a lot of things to think about, a lot of things to consider, and it was very helpful. I was very thankful that I had that connection. He was able to help me deal with what I was going through. And I was able to get the alcoholism in control. It's something I constantly look out for. It does run in my family. And as my father-in-law will actually say, there is no alcoholisms. It's always alcoholism. It's something that's always with you. And there's been many times in the near futures even when I've kind of had to put that in check. I saw myself drinking more. I saw myself going down that path. And okay, I need to make some concerted effort to change this and try to really deal with what's going on inside. So I was getting the drinking under control. Again, I was never drunk during a shift. I didn't drink while on duty. Honestly, I started doing a lot more overtime shifts because I just couldn't bring myself to even drink anywhere near my shift. Life was going pretty good, and then the second ambulance accident hit. The big one, the one that almost took my life. And I made some major mistakes after that one. First and foremost, I tried to set up an instant stress debriefing meeting, but some of the members of the crew said, "Oh, we'll just go meet at the bar. We don't need it." And I should have set it up. I should have actually had it. I knew better. I knew that even people who say that they need something, and I didn't. Number two, big mistakes I made. I took time off of work. I was injured, but I didn't jump right back on the rig. And I later learned during these tragic events, the quicker you get back to normal, the less mental health issues you're going to have. The sooner you can normalize it, the sooner you can get back to work, the sooner you can say, you know what, yep, that sucked, but I'm stronger than that, the better for you. I ended up taking, I think, 2 weeks off, which was just wrong. I never should have done that. I really wish I would have known what I know now. So anyway, I went back to work, and I'd have near freezes where anxiety would hit me hard and heavy in the middle of a call. Usually a swerve, go by the same intersection. I hear a noise. I was that hyper vigilant. I'd come home from work just absolutely exhausted. And it was really, I was starting to get super, super burnt out. Because I was jumping at everything. I never totally froze. I'm proud of myself. I was usually able to get under control to the point that I could still be productive on the call. But that thought of me freezing and not being able to help someone, that scared the hell out of me. I got it and I became a paramedic because I never wanted to feel that helpless feeling. And being frozen on a call, there's nothing more helpless than that. Thankfully, I knew something was up. I tried talking to my priest friend, but he just wasn't helping this time. I needed a little bit more. I did, thankfully, know quite a few of the interventionless psychologists, I believe they're called. There's a title, emergency psychologists. The guys who we call them into the hospital to deal with, people who are having these mental breakdowns, psychotic episodes, tragic events. I knew one gentleman. I trusted him, which helped a lot. I know he worked with fire and EMTs and police and paramedics and the whole 9 yards. Of course, I couldn't bring myself to actually make an appointment. So I set up hour-long appointment with him to talk about a training I wanted to do. I get in there, and damn it, he was good. He called me right out. He's like, this is bullshit. This is no training. What's going on? So I talked with him quite a bit. I think we actually went into the 2-hour mark. And he was good. My hats off to those people who are able to do that and really dive into the issues. While talking to him, we got to the root cause of the problem. For the first time in my life, I was scared of dying. I was fearful of dying. It actually took him by surprise when we came to that revelation. He was trying to steer me towards admitting that I didn't have control. Because he knew me. He knew that I loved control. I was a control freak. Still am, of course. So he thought it was because I had lost control, because I wasn't driving the ambulance. He got me to admit that, yeah, even though I was in the back, I felt responsible for the accident. Because I made the call to continue with lights and sirens on the call. And he was probably right. Part of it probably was that I felt like I made the wrong call, even though I wasn't driving. The person who was at fault was the person who hit us. But he dug deeper and found out that for the first time in my life, I was scared of dying. This was a new revelation for me. And it wasn't the fact that, while my life is ending, I could be going to heaven or hell, that the lights were going out. I was scared to die because I didn't want to leave my wife and kids. After my wife's almost dying, I realized what that meant, what I would be putting my wife through. And I was scared that I almost put her through what would have been hell on earth, would have been one of the most indescribable horrors I think anyone would ever have to face. Having their spouse die and then having to raise children by themselves, having my children grow up fatherless. The research we now know about kids who grow up fatherless is immense. We know how much it messes them up. So, yep, got to the root of that cause. I kept talking to him and getting that psychiatric help I needed, doing checkups, talking to whether it was priests or counselors. I still do every now and then, go in and get a little booster shot, if you will. I'm much more aware of my mental health. I try to protect it. I'm always checking myself. An unfortunate saying that some of my family members will use, one beer, it's not enough, 2 beers is too many. I'm always checking myself for that. Am I just drinking to drink? Am I drinking to get drunk because I want to avoid what's going on in my head, my cabeza? And I find myself cutting myself out an awful lot. It really is sad. We will have yearly physicals. We have multiple doctors we'll go to see. Even when we're healthy, we'll go see multiple doctors, multiple specialists, but we don't go and see multiple psychiatrists, psychologists, behavioral managements. We don't go to support groups or talk groups. Not because maybe there's something actively wrong, but let's get that checkup. Let's get that health. We'll spend hundreds of dollars, even thousands of dollars to go work out and to eat right, to take our vitamins. We won't spend $50 to just go talk to a therapist, get a little checkup. Get a different perspective on what we're going through. Just recently, actually, I talked to a counselor. I've been working at home, and I've been very short with my kids, which is weird. I love my children. I love being around them. And I've been short with them. Right when I get out of work, and unlike a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, there's some people who do work from home who You can hear the kids running around the background. You hear them driving to the store, picking up groceries. I have my office. I'm there from 8 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon. I take my lunch breaks. I take my bathroom breaks. But I'm at my desk. I mean business. And this counselor, man, they're good. She hit the nail on the head. She asked, well, how long was your commute before this all kicked off? I said, well, anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on where I was working. Okay. She said, you ever think you missed that time? You missed that driving time? That you time, alone time, that quiet time? Hit me like a ton of bricks. She was right. I would use that time to pray, to clear my thoughts, to really focus on leaving work at work. But it was amazing. Made some changes in my life. I'm doing better now. I'm making sure to get some time in just for me that I can decompress after work before jumping in and helping out with my kids. The moral of the story that I really hope you all take from this is we really do need to monitor and keep our mental health in check just as much as we keep our body and physical health in check. I really wish more people would just go to counselors, go to psychiatrists, go to psychologists. Go in and get checked out. There's nothing wrong with it. There's no shame in it. You're taking care of your whole person, your whole body. Your mental health, your mental being is just as important as your physical being, just as important as your spiritual being. I took very good care of my physical health and my spiritual health, but it was my mental health. I neglected that. So I hope this normalizes it for you, to realize that yes, you can be an amazing paramedic, amazing engineer, amazing whatever you do. Tough as nails. You can be one of the strongest people you know. I still have a lot of people tell me that how strong I am for what I do and what I did. I'm able to stare down a lot of very difficult and tragic and terrible situations still to this day. Dealing with death and suffering. I can deal with that. But I have to remind myself that I also have to deal with me. If I go ahead and see someone die, I need to go talk to someone or mention it and deal with that. Not just compartmentalize it and pack it away. So I hope you all think about it this week, this month. Go talk to someone. Talk to a counselor. Maybe you don't actually need one. You don't think you need your mental health is great. Perfect, awesome. But we go have physicals every year and we feel great. We'll go to the doctor for a checkup, even though we feel great. Just to see what's going on behind the curtain. That's what these counselors can do for you. You don't have to have something wrong to go talk to them. If nothing else, if they give you a clean bill of health, hey, you're doing great, I don't think you need anything. Perfect, right? That's when we cheer. The doctor says, hey, your blood pressure's good, your pulse is good, your labs are good. Keep doing what you're doing, it's working. Go talk to a counselor. Get them to say the same thing. Or maybe listen when they say, hey, you ever think that, whatever happened last week, maybe you should talk about that, deal with that? Do you think about looking at it this way, that maybe you enjoyed that drive, even though you thought it was what was killing you, doing those long-distance drives into work? Maybe you need it. Maybe you need that time alone. Simple little change, like taking 10 minutes to do some stretching and just kind of sit and do nothing in your office before you go take care of your kids. Make all the difference in the world. Simple little change. So I hope you do. I hope you get out there. I hope you schedule a little mental health checkup. Again, there's probably nothing wrong with you. Probably come out with flying colors. But just like going to the doctor for our yearly checkups, same thing. Coming out of the doc, hey, what'd the doc say? Perfect health. Labs are good. Blood pressure's good. Pretty healthy. Kudos, 2 thumbs up. But at least you'll know. At least you'll start that pattern of getting help. And that pattern of getting help will do wonders for you in the long run. So then when you are dealing with something, you have a system. You have a plan. You have connections. It's not new. It's not scary to go talk to a counselor. I've got this. So anyway, I hope you're all doing well. Hope everyone does give some serious consideration to going and getting some help. Or going to get a checkup. Go get that checkup. You won't regret it. Again, you're probably perfectly fine, but let the specialists, let the professionals give you a second opinion. So I hope you consider that. But anyway, I'm going to sign off, so stay safe out there, and we'll see you on the next one.